So you are going to contact somebody online. And you know this is a long shot. Okay, he or she is very attractive compared to you. So how much are you going to write? Are you going to write a long message? Are you going to write a message that has many positive things? Hi everyone, my name is Josue. I do research on online dating, and I will present you some pretty graphs to tell you what online dating is doing to us. So the first graph shows you, I don't have a clicker. This graph shows you how we meet our partners. So in the right-hand side, you have how heterosexual people meet their partners in the last 100 years, and this side you have how homosexual people met their partners. And we usually met our partners through a common friend, or we went together to school, or we go to church together, or we live in the same area. But the red line is online dating, and in 1995 it started, and suddenly it became the second most common way to meet your spouse for heterosexual people, and now 70% of homosexual relationships start online. So it has had a massive change, and if we update this picture to the right, now you will see that by 2019, with real data, online dating was the most common way to meet your spouse. So all of you, like the majority of you, will likely meet your spouse or your long-time partner online. So that's a big change. So I will tell you more or less what determines who meets whom online, from what we know from science. So first, let's see who uses online dating. So we know these graphs here show you the age of the people. The red curves is for women, the blue for men. And it shows you that in some cities, for example, in Seattle, in the US, we see more men using online dating, but it's more or less balanced, and it's mainly young people. Okay, that's the first thing to see. Then the second thing to see is, you may ask, so who talks to whom online? Who gets the likes on Tinder or whatever platform you're using? So what this graph is showing you is that Tinder is a ruthless environment. It's incredibly competitive. So this shows you, orders the people by the number of likes they get. So this picture shows you that 80% of the users of Tinder get only 20% of the likes, whereas 20% of the users get 80% of the likes. There's some people that everybody talks to, and there's some people that not so many people talk to us, maybe. And then if you put this compared to an economy, to the wealth of an economy, so for example, this is the Gini coefficient. It's a measure of inequality. So how many people have what? So Denmark is has very little, Sweden has very little inequality, whereas Tinder has massive inequality, like larger than most countries. So we know some people are getting a lot of messages, and most people are getting very few likes on Tinder. So what do people do to increase the number of likes? Or how could you behave strategically online dating? And how can that help you? So let's look at, this is more or less the same idea. So in the top graph, you see the number of messages women get on OkCupid. So you see, most people get like 5 per month. Some lucky ones get 10. For men, it's incredibly unlikely that you get more than 5. It's absolutely, you're killing it if you're getting more than 5. Yeah. No, and the thing, these are all scientific papers, so I'm not telling you some crazy shit. This graph is also nice. Focus on the 2 panels in the top. So what this tells you is, in the x-axis, we have the desirability gap. A -8 or a minus number means that you're talking to someone who is less attractive than you. If we are in the plus side, the +8 means that person is way more attractive than you. Like you are really, really being hopeful there. So what this shows you is that, in general, you send messages to people that are slightly more attractive than you, but you are incredibly good at guessing who is at your same level of attractiveness, which is surprising because in psychology and economics, we know that if I ask you, okay, how many of you are smarter than the average person? 75% will say, I'm smarter than the average. So we're very bad at predicting our own intelligence, but we're incredibly good at predicting how well we can do in Tinder. And the lower curves shows you the replies received. Of course, we are more likely to receive a reply from someone who is very little attractive compared to us. But and for men, it's a very cruel game. It's really hard. Okay, now, so you are going to contact somebody online. And you know this is a long shot. Okay, he or she is very attractive compared to you. So how much are you going to write? Are you going to write a long message? Are you going to write a message that has many positive things? So this picture more or less shows what's happening. So for women, this on the right, we see that when women are contacting somebody who is more attractive than them, they start writing more. And the more attractive that person is, that's the blue and those curves going up. On the opposite side, men, well, it's flatter, and surprisingly, you don't write more positive messages. Like, you don't write, because kind of you are very good at predicting that those people are not going to reply to you. But this is the same picture. I want to show you what do you need to write. So you can say, okay, I went to some guy talking about online dating and I learned nothing. I'm still getting 0 matches. Okay, so this is what you shouldn't do. So here are words that dramatically decrease the probability that you will receive a reply. So if you write something incredibly casual, like, yo, what's up? So all these words, can't, yeah, love, that's not gonna help you. So first, try to be a bit more formal than that. Guys, if you start complimenting right away, despite what Tinder tells you, that's also not gonna work. So for example, if you write hot, beautiful, sexy, But on the other side, if you try to give an optimistic idea of yourself, that's gonna play in your favor. Cool, fascinating, awesome. And the next graph is even more surprising, because this kind of you already expected. But if I ask you, if you write video games, if you have the word video games on your first message of Tinder, does that increases or does that decreases the number of replies you're gonna get? Decreases. Anybody? You, what do you think? Video games? Or if you have physics, maybe this does sound to me immediately like the most attractive words, but here in the right-hand side, you see that literature, physics, zombie, vegetarian, great. Those are great, because the big thing that's happening online is it's way easier to find someone that has the same interest than you. And I will show you how that affects the racial interaction in our society. But I will come to more dense topics later. Also, if you write about your religion, whatever is your religion, that plays in your favor, because it's easier that you meet someone who has the same, is looking for the same things that you're searching. So now I'm going to move on how this little behavior, silly behavior, affects the whole society. Wait. This graph, first let's look at age. So on top is women, and on the bottom is men. So how old do you prefer your partner to be? Unsurprisingly, the top figure shows that men, 20, love it, 80, not so much. So it's decreasing. But for women, 20, all right, but the top is at 45, what some people call the George Clooney effect. Yeah. Now, for education, women, unsurprisingly, like their partners to be highly educated, postgrad the best, PhD. But men like them educated, but not so educated. See how the highest is in college, but then in postgrad it goes down. Well, that's what is happening. And then we also know who do you prefer in terms of race. Surprisingly, I mean, there's some behavior there that is changing, but for example, for men, they tend to prefer to contact Asian women, and women tend to prefer to contact white men. But this is just the average, so how does that look in the individual details? Okay, now I'm going to show you that. We all, when you start the conversation, when you are the brave one that says, hey, how are you doing? You tend to contact people from your own race. So A means Asian, B, black, E, Indian, H, Hispanic, W, white. This means that you tend to contact people from your own race. So we all, Asian, black, Indian, Hispanic, white, Latino, contact Latina. Latina contacts Latino. But do you actually reply to them? Surprisingly not. For example, Asian guys don't reply to Asian women as much as they reply to other races. So now let's look at that in more detail. I'll come back to this in a minute. I want to show you. These squares tell you how many of the messages are replied. So let's look at the one in the right. So an Asian male has 22% of his messages get a reply from an Asian female. That's the top there. Sorry, I don't have one. Or white male receives 29% of replies from Asian females. Are we all in the same square? Good. As you see, white males get replies from, have very good chance to get a reply from any type of women. On the other side here, white male replies to very few women compared to everybody else. Who replies more? I think I would say Latino, but yeah, well, you can see it here. Surprisingly, so we know there's a racial preference. So men prefer Asian and then white, and then men prefer white and then Latina and blah, blah. But what I want to show you, and it's the first thing I want to take away from this, is that your racial preferences are not set in stone. There's this amazing paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences a couple of years back that show that when you receive a message, say I'm Latino, and I get a message from an Asian, then I become much more open to contact and to reply to Asian women. And that happens for all combination of races. So here, yeah, this is harder to interpret, but that's what these figures kind of tell you. That once there is some exchange, you become much more likely to actually cross the racial barrier. And this is not an isolated phenomenon because people who serve in the army, they come back, they're much more likely to say that they will actually participate in an interracial relationship. So once you get the exposure, you don't care about race that much. But the problem is that we don't get the exposure. The average American high school student has less than one interracial friend. We live with people that are like us. We go to school with people that are like us. Our societies, if you have been in the US, our societies are completely segregated sometimes. And even though, here I go back, the number of people that would say in OkCupid that they would date somebody from another race is improving, still a very strong racial preference. And here I will come finally to do some, I will talk about my own research. So this is my Facebook friend graph. So if I know you and you know her, you are linked in this graph, okay? So you see some clusters because here are my Erasmus friends. This is the people I went to high school with. They all know each other. These are my friends that I play football with. Cool thing, the triangles, the yellow triangles are my ex-girlfriends that I met in high school or in undergrad. So of course I have a lot of common friends with them, like 12. So breakups are really hard because they're going to take sides. But when I was in grad school doing my PhD, I started trying Tinder because I didn't believe that it worked. And the people I met in Tinder are the red stars. These are people I had no connection with. They could be complete strangers. If it was not for Tinder, I probably never met them. It's a bit random. Like we're all together and you're swiping, and the probability that you get exposed to someone outside your circle, it's much larger. And from the previous graphs, we saw that once you cross the racial barrier, you become open to it. And now, Trump's, uh, this is the number of interracial marriages in the US for the last 50 years. So just so that you get a sense, in 1967, interracial marriage was still forbidden in 13 out of the 50 states in the US. There was a big case, Virginia versus, here they were still forbidden. So then you see, this starts growing, the number of interracial marriages in the US, but very slowly, it still was a taboo. Legalization of interracial marriage happened much later than the segregation of schools. But then, something happens in 1995. That's my red line. That's when Match.com kicks in. And then the interracial marriage starts following a different trend completely. And then, in 2004, OkCupid, and it starts increasing faster and faster, and 2012 is Tinder. And then we see that it's increasing faster and faster. And you, from looking at this picture, you could say, okay, it seems like online dating is really doing something in increasing the number of interracial marriages, which is a very sensitive topic. And that's kind of gives us an idea of how a society is becoming together. Social integration is very hard to achieve, particularly in these intimate areas of our society. But how is this relationship happening? So here you see the percentage in interracial marriages in each state, in each of the 50 states in the US, and the x-axis is the number of those states, how much internet availability they have. And what this picture shows is that more internet availability, more interracial marriage. And I don't want to show you all the tables here, but this is a very well-known phenomenon by now. Okay. I was working on this, but then all the other people started looking at this. And it's funny that we think of online dating as something so silly. It starts, well, but then when you look at the big picture, it has interesting consequences because it makes how we meet our partners differently, and that changes everything, because your racial preferences, as I said, are not set in stone. So let's look at this graph from 2019. So look at the right panel. So if you meet your partner online, 30% have different races. But if you meet offline, it's only 19. And a different paper said that estimates with different data, but they all find that if you meet online, you're incredibly more likely to be of interracial. Surprisingly, you're also a bit more likely to be of different political parties and different educational levels, but not for income. But that's the main takeaway. Okay, so the last thing, I was telling my grandma about online dating, and she told me, yeah, but, or when you tell friends, they think that this is kind of for hookups, or these are low-quality relationships. No, I mean, many people share that belief and think, well, maybe if you started your relationship online, maybe it's not a very good one. What I'm showing you here is some sociologists went around to like 1 million households in the US and said, how did you meet your partner? And how long have you been together? And how happy do you think are you with your marriage? And people that met online were happier than people who met their partner elsewhere, which is like, why? Second thing, they also lasted slightly longer. And I'm going to tell you why after showing you this. Meeting online is the black line, so it's slightly higher. This is a bit of a sad graph because you see that most relationships finish very fast. But in general, meeting online makes it last a bit longer. Why? We didn't expect that. And also, if you meet your partner online, the time that you spend between meeting up and marriage is much, much, much shorter. Much shorter. So these people are meeting online, are getting better marriages, or at least as good as any other marriage. They are reporting higher degrees of satisfaction, and they're getting married very fast. What do you think that could be? So my own work, what I study is, first, is much easier to search. We saw that 70% of homosexual relationships start online. And that's because, for example, if you are homosexual, you have a small pool of potential partners. It's hard to identify who is homosexual. Or if I am divorced, it's hard to find someone else who is looking. But if you're online, it's very likely that you will find someone who is also searching. And searching is much cheaper and faster than going to a pub and asking things that you can maybe find out faster online. So it makes searching faster, it makes it more diverse, and even though online dating has bad things, in general, I think it has had a positive effect in society, and that's what I wanted to convey to you. Thank you.